All right, good morning. I would like to introduce Sally Farrell, 4-H agent and unit coordinator in Craig County. Before diving into this interview, could you provide a brief overview of yourself and your role as an agent here in Craig?
Yes, I run. I'm actually a youth development agent, and I work with youth of all ages in Craig County. And we do a more of a non-traditional model with it. So I do provide STEM programming in the schools, and we have a club-based 4-H program where I have a livestock club, a horse club, and a shooting club, and a teen club. And I take youth to camp every year. So I had just came back from camp, and I had about 55 campers and 8 teens and 5 adult volunteers.
Awesome. Thank you for that brief introduction. I had the honors of interviewing Kathy yesterday, and she provided me with great insight on the different counterparts of being a volunteer leader under you. So I'd like to use my time today to discuss the management and recruitment methods that you've allowed great success within your years here at 4-H. With that being said, could you give me just a small insight on your philosophy of leadership?
Well, one thing that a lot of people don't understand that the 4-H program is volunteer based, and we cannot provide our programming uh, model without volunteers. So traditionally, I have recruited from within my program. Parents have served as great volunteers, and then also uh, teens that have aged out often come back and serve as volunteers for the program. So I'm always looking for people uh, with varied interests to provide programming. I can't start a club without at least 2 trained adult volunteers. So that being said, COVID really put a hit on us because we weren't able to do as much programming. So we're trying to come back from that and reestablish more programming in our community.
I really think your philosophy focuses on the importance of a volunteer, and they're not a second class citizen, and their perspective and interests matter, or you wouldn't have a successful club. So, with that being said, to expand on hiring or selecting volunteers, do you have a specific method you use when selecting volunteers since you're in such a small community?
Well, I have served as a 4-H volunteer myself, either as an agent or as a volunteer for over 30 years. So I understand the program itself and the requirements for a volunteer. All our volunteers are background checked, and that's a very important step. And we get references on them and interview. So we have to make sure that the children will be safe within the program. I mean that there's and I provide training for them. All of my volunteers are mandated reporters for child abuse, so we do that training yearly to make sure that the adults understand that. Um, you have to you don't take everyone as a volunteer because not everyone can fit working with the children. So, but oftentimes then you can use that person maybe in a different role for to support the program. So, not everybody is suited to work directly with the youth.
I would agree. And you mentioned that a lot of times you have teens that age out and become volunteers. Have you found a niche for training young volunteers? I mean,
I'm really lucky that my best volunteer is he came through the program. Probably his dad was a volunteer for us, and he actually started in the teen club for us. I mean shooting club, excuse me, shooting club, and now he runs the teen club and is an assistant to the shooting club, and he also works with the ambassadors. So in 4-H we have leadership opportunities within our camping program, but then depending on their specific interests, like they can serve as horse ambassadors, livestock ambassadors, so the older teens take more responsibility in doing the programming. We have 4-H Congress this week up at Virginia Tech, and they select delegates, older teens as delegates to actually uh, help run that program through elections, and they do programming throughout the year as representatives for 4-H. So we try to expand their responsibilities as they get older through the camping program or different opportunities in our programming.
I think that's great. You can't be just thrown in and expect to succeed.
No.
Working your way through the cycle seems like you've created a very successful, manageful team. Um, Among the initial processes we just discussed, it's also important to create community goodwill and trust along with collaboration, especially in Craig. It's so small, everybody knows everybody. So, in terms of collaborating under 4 H, do you incorporate other businesses and organizations within 4 H? And if you do, how do you use those businesses?
Well, I serve on different committees, volunteer committees. Um, and I also have worked with you and FFA and try to offer my assistance where I can, especially in when we do the Land Lab Fair. We, I work. I'm on that committee to help that happen. Try to provide animals to the school system. Within the communities actually support us a lot through my scholarship program. I reach out to them. But if there's a specific need for a volunteer, a lot of times the community will contact us, and generally it's going to be through the teen club that we do our service-based learning with them because they're older and have varied interests. Like the kids are in, they provide um, they're my counselors in camp, so they're not. They may have a livestock background, they might have a shooting background, or that may be the only thing that they do. So they're more varied.
And as you mentioned, the different backgrounds, we know youth and agriculture can be a little chaotic and there can be risk posed with that. How would you explain the utilization of policies or risk management plans?
Well, all of the activities. Well, like for let's say for camp, like we go to camp, the teens actually help lead some of the classes and my volunteers. So I develop a risk management plan, and then that is submitted up through like the camping supervisor to get approved. Uh, yeah, I'm very risk aware. We have waivers. Kids under 9 are not allowed to have sole control of the livestock or the horses. Shooting club, we go through. All the kids are trained on the line commands, and we have safety meetings every time before we have shooting. With horses, they have to wear helmets, closed-toed shoes. So we take risk management very carefully. Um, and the volunteers know that they have some protection as far as liability, but as long as they're not negligent. So I always stress that, as long as you're reasonably following the risk management, then that does offer them some protection from liability.
It seems like you have a good foundation for risk management. But along with risk management and the selection process we've talked about, it's also important to make sure that you are continuing to reach success through reflection. How do you actively assess your project goals and your staff that are working under you?
Uh, well, we actually have to do write impact statements, on our program. So I evaluate the different programs by interviews by people who I work with, um, clients, my volunteers, and it really has to be like it, it it has to be objectively measured, to see. And not every program that you have is going to work. So you need to get that feedback. I try to get feedback from my volunteers, and if I'm working with teachers, like what works, what doesn't work, and I have a good enough relationship with them that they can be honest with me. This isn't going to work, or this is going to work. So that's basically how I do it. But when I have to report every year to Virginia Tech, and I have to say how many people I have come in contact with, what programs I have done, and then it's basically through the impact statements that we evaluate our programs.
It seems like that's one of your big takeaways too, is the relationships you've built and the ability to trust their statements and allow you to evaluate your programs. But ending this interview, I would like to ask you 2 questions, as you have been a great mentor to me, and you have plenty of experience under the belt. So, do you have any advice for new leaders entering the world of volunteer management?
Well, I think you have to. One of the main things is like if you come into the job, you can't do everything yourself. I mean, I made the mistakes of trying to start clubs and programs with just myself and not the volunteers. So you may have to wait for things to come to you. But your main group of people are your parents because they're vested in your program. So mainly most of my best volunteers have been parents. But and then like my leader Kathy, who you talked to yesterday, she came into the program as a parent, and her daughter is 29 years old, the one who showed livestock. So she's been out of the program for over 10 years, yet Kathy continues. My horse club volunteer, her kids have been out of the program for at least 10 years too, so they continue on. So a lot of times you can initially get them as parents, and then if you're lucky enough, like I've been, that you might get the second generation still helping, like with my shooting club. Michael, who helps with the shooting club and then runs my teen club, his dad was one of my leaders. And so that's, you either get them as they're coming out of the program or parents. But you have to be patient and just don't take anyone, because you can ruin your program with a bad volunteer.
Yeah, you definitely have to maintain that as
Yeah,
community builds trust
yeah,
and the outer appearance of what they see.
because I had this program, and then I went up to Maine for 4 years, and I came back, and there hadn't been an agent for 2 years, and the whole program had collapsed, so I had to rebuild it. So I've seen it from both ends. So I'm hoping that I have enough good volunteers in place, so I'm retiring, that it will keep going on till I can get an agent in.
And with that being said, you did create a unique opportunity because you are retiring very soon. So as you've been in 4-H and leadership and a unit coordinator for many, many years, what is your biggest takeaway from the years that you've presented?
It's those special moments when I love working with the kids. Parents, not so much, but the kids, yes. And when you have like the special moment of working when it connects and your activity goes well, or some kid who who has a terrible home life, and you've really made a difference with them. Those are that makes all the heartaches, 100-hour weeks or whatever, worth it. So that's what keeps you going, is the special moments. I guess they call them sparks sometimes. Maybe that's the buzzword now. If you have a spark, and you feel like I have had kids come up to me, or parents, 15 years later, 20 years later, and say that what a difference like that I've made, and that makes it worth it. I think that very few jobs, maybe as a teacher you will hear that, but it makes it worth it.
I would definitely agree. The kids change everything.
They do. Kids, we're there for the kids.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.